going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 220. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him... E, sitting here midweek, Austin, Texas, getting ready for the Loons of Minnesota United to come to town, returning to Q2 here on Saturday. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm a little nervous, man. I'm concerned about this matchup. I'm concerned about this month. I've been looking at the schedule upcoming here and getting more and more nervous about it. But I think I said last episode that you have an opportunity in front of you here that you should be excited about. So sometimes excitement, anxiety, they go hand in hand here. I think I'm leaning a little more anxious on as we sit here right now. But, it's going to be a tough matchup. But I just really, I think I texted you yesterday, go, it's Tuesday, man. I wish it was Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think that's been my cadence this year. Like win, draw, or loss after the weekend is like once we get to Tuesday. And of course, you and I are like starting to look into the preview episode and everything. But yeah, that's when the time starts ticking in my head, where I'm counting the hours till we get back to the queue. So I think for me, it's a nervous excitement because it is a big opportunity to have all these midweek games to really push, I would say ourselves, for the team to push themselves, right, through this month of May with potentially 9 matches ahead of them. And we get potentially 6 of them at home. That's a boost. And again, you're going up against some of the best that MLS has to offer. So again, if we just went this, first 10 games, right, was a measuring stick to get another 9. And in league play, no matter what happens in the Open Cup, you will be at the halfway point at the end of May because game 17 is on the road at San Diego. So we'll preview that Minnesota match here today. We've got kind of an extended last business day to get to later and some nonsense to close out the episode. But before we get into a couple pieces of news, maybe a little rogue rumor flying around here early in the week, just want to remind you all listening or watching on the YouTube channel that the best way to support the show, you can actually support us financially by downloading the audio version of all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And you can toggle on auto downloads, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get those pods. That can support the show going forward, and you don't have to think about it again. You can go the extra mile. Rate and review the show wherever you get your pods. And if you are watching on our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It does help us grow the show. And you can hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up, as one did last week, or a new episode goes live. And of course, here on episode 220, hit the thumbs up, like the video, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords, atone for your sins, wash yourselves clean in Brian's birthday weekend. Let's talk about this rumor that popped up, I think, on Monday morning, and this is coming from what appears to be a Monterrey fan account. I'm not sure if this, is a media credentialed outlet down there around this team, around Rayados, but what they are claiming here, and I chuckle on purpose, they say Austin FC has offered $13 million for forward Herman Bertarame, who, of course, we saw at Q2 last Leagues Cup with Brandon Vasquez, right? And so, again, this seems to me to be 110% smoke from an agent or from Monterrey, or even just, again, if this is a fan account, it could just be fans wish casting here that after a relatively down season for Monterrey, from my perspective, that they're trying to just stir up some shit here. Because if you have any baseline knowledge of the MLS roster rules and Austin's roster build, first of all, paying $13 million, that's a lot of money after we just spent $30. That would also force Austin to sell one of the designated players they just bought in the last 8 months or whatever it's been since we brought Buka in. And it probably narrows it down to either Azuni or Vasquez would have to be on the outs for this to happen. Because if you move Bukhari, now we've got 3 strikers that we're going to 3 striker formation. I don't think so. So I just wanted to touch on this from the roster rules standpoint, because I think you as a North End listener and an Austin FC fan can maybe see some of these things, and immediately your bullshit detector goes off, as ours did when we saw this on Monday morning.
I mean, maybe this account saw that we can't score goals and we're like, yeah, they could use Batarme. But yeah, I don't see any way that you could fit this dude in here unless you're selling Guilherme Biru for north of $20 million, which probably sounds like a deal or steal for some team. But yeah, this just doesn't fit. I don't see how it fits in any way, shape, or form. I think you and I were going through any type of possibilities that could arise, and maybe Azuni wants to go to Spain.
Yeah, like I think the most plausible thing is, right, he had a change of heart when his child was born over the last week or two, and like now he wants to go back to Europe. Again, I don't think that's the case at all. So even if somebody paid us Guilherme's rightful value there, 20 million, we would still have to open up a DP slot and send one of those guys out. We cannot buy them down with TAM at this point of their contracts. So unless you have anything else to add here, man, we can just leave this rumor in the past.
Yeah, I'm good to move on from this one here.
So, of course, we were cleaning up the Robert Taylor acquisition on Sunday's episode. Taylor did land in Austin on Sunday night. We had a Reddit user, I forget the name, so I apologize for not attributing the picture, but saw him at the airport on Sunday night. We get some pictures from the club on Monday. Then on Tuesday, he was in training with the team. And on Tuesday night, went out to La Murga practice out there at Live Oak Park outside of Q2 and met with La Murga and some other fans who were gathered there around the practice. So you can see, if you're watching on the YouTube or if you've been paying attention to our social media accounts, Robert Taylor will wear Hector's old number 16 there. So Bobby Taylor wearing the 16 in training already this week. And I guess the only question I have is, how many minutes is he going to play on Saturday? Because I think active for sure. That's not really a question to me with this guy who was, again, traded while he was on the plane getting ready to go play CONCACAF semifinals last week. He should be ready to go.
He's ready to go. I'm really, really excited for him. As you know, we jumped on the live stream there after that trade came through. We're talking about his, the prospect of bringing him in, what he was going to look like, where we could potentially fit him. And as we did some more research onto him, it looked like you can really move him around to different positions, which we're going to need here. Obviously, you pick up the pep ding in this Houston matchup, so now you're feeling a little bit more heat, a little more pressure on that midfield. And I think that he's going to be ready to hit the ground running, because we knew that he was losing minutes down there in Miami to some younger players and some players who were really just playing with their hair on fire, essentially, with that Miami club. But we're going to need him. He's going to have a role here, and I think he's going to be a really, really nice piece for us moving forward. And I'm excited to see how much time he can get here come Saturday, because I do think he's going to be called upon. I wouldn't anticipate a start, but I will anticipate that he's going to be one of the rotational pieces that we see out there for Austin on Saturday.
Let's go ahead and jump into previewing this match on Saturday. Minnesota United coming to town. First meeting of the 2025 season between these two clubs. And all time in the head-to-head matchup. One of the few, I think, Western Conference teams that Austin actually has a favorable history against in the 9 matchups historically between these two. Austin has won 5 of those. Minnesota has won 4, so we are without any draws against Minnesota United through 4 seasons of play. First meeting was back in the expansion season, of course, but that was our 3rd ever match on the road, of course, beginning the first 7 or 8 matches of that season on the road. And that game ended up as the club's 2nd ever win on the back of a Diego Fagundes goal, assisted by a long kind of curling ball on the ground from Jared Stroud in transition. So there you go. A little throwback there for you. Since then, obviously, 4 wins for each team in the 8 matches that have followed. But Austin has won 3 of the last 4, which was a little surprising to me, because my feelings say we have not been good against Minnesota, because the one loss of the last 4 was the season opening rage game in 2024. So that we did bounce back with the victory on the road. Hassani Dotson got a red early. Diego Rubio scored. And the rest of the match felt like we were the team that was down a man. So again, even though the results have gone in our favor lately against this team over the last 2 seasons, it hasn't been pretty.
Yeah, I mean, soon as we saw Minnesota United here on the schedule, I was like, oh God, we suck against them. But that was solely because of that opening day matchup that was just an absolute disaster class for Austin. And then I'm trying to remember where I was for the 1-0 matchup with the red card to Hassani Dotson there. It was on my brother's birthday, so I know that I was probably in New York. I had to be at some sort of lake house or on the bike or something along those lines. I think I was at a lake house and forcing my friends who do not watch soccer, much less MLS, watch this Austin matchup. And I remember getting the red card and everything, texting you like, oh yeah, we got some life here. Let's do
Here
this.
we go.
So I had kind of blocked that out, but yes, it invokes feelings of, damn it, this team is better than us. And then you see the figures and you know that's just like a feeling thing. But look, man, I respect this club. I respect who they have right now. I respect the way they coach, the way they approach the game. They can see they're sitting there right behind us in 4th place, and they're a quality team.
Yeah, and so as this is the first time we've seen Minnesota this year, of course, we give the quick little history lesson on our opponents. Minnesota United began MLS play in the 2017 season. They were the 23rd MLS club, but the franchise was founded in 2010 and initially named NSC Minnesota, which stands for the National Sports Center, which is where they played their matches to begin the franchise in Blaine, Minnesota, just outside Minneapolis. And that they were in the NASL, which of course is now defunct. They were taking over for a team called the Minnesota Thunder, who is a USL 1 side. And I thought this was fun. Their mascot was just Thor, the Thunder, for that USL 1 side. They didn't actually fold the team. They went under a reorganization and then kind of re-blossomed, rising like a phoenix from the ashes as NSC Minnesota in the NASL. After 2 seasons in the NASL, they rebranded with a new logo and a new name. They dropped that NSC portion of the team's name and became the Minnesota Stars. So they played 3 more seasons in the NASL before Don Garber announced in 2015 that the club would be added to MLS. With that move came the establishment of the new crest, Minnesota United, new name. And of course, the crest you can see there on the YouTube. It's that nice loon. One thing I didn't know until doing some research on the history of the club is that loon has 11 feathers, similar to the Austin tree in the crest that has 11 leaves on it, signifying the players on the pitch. So I thought that was a nice little, very traditional touch, but one that I didn't notice until now. Since 2017, when they came into the MLS, the expansion season was very, very rough. Conceded a record 18 goals across their first 4 matches. I see that look. That was my look reading that as well. They were led in goals in that expansion season by Christian Ramirez with 14. Of course, Ramirez was at Q2 2 weeks ago as the starting striker for the Galaxy. Since then, though, the Loons have mostly avoided being a bottom-of-the-table team. They've also failed to finish near the top over their last 6 seasons. In 5 of those 6 seasons, they finished between 4th and 6th in the West and 7th and 11th in the Supporters' Shield standings. So this is a top half of the table team year in and year out, but they haven't quite been able to get over that hump. And again, last season was a season in transition. We talked about it at length coming into the 2024 season, right? New coach Eric Ramsey replacing Adrian Heath last year. He was not even in the States, I believe, for that season opener. They had their next pro coach coaching them. But it wasn't just transition on the coaching staff. Of course, if you were paying attention to MLS at large the last few seasons, the Emmanuel Reynoso saga came to an end a few months into last season. Of course, he was away from the team for multiple periods over, the last 18 months with the club, dealing with various legal troubles back in his native Argentina. I think somewhat surprisingly, at least to you and I, they hit the ground running without Reynoso and ended up tying their club record last season with 15 wins. But with how stacked the West was, right? I remember it was like record-setting levels for that playoff line. Their 52 points was still only good for 6th in the West last year, but felt like a very strong foundation coming into the Ramsey era this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I remember the Reynoso saga and how much respect we had for him as a player and what he brought to that team in regard to just being one of the highest quality 10s that we had in this league. And I thought replacing him was going to be a very, very tall task, because he not only was able to score, but able to distribute. But they have been able to replace him. I think Ramsey's a good coach. I think they have these guys playing the right style that they want to play. I know that you and I do some subterfuge work on the internets and the forums and things of that nature. Yeah, so a little bit of the reconnaissance there and everything like that. And they're frustrated as a fan base right now. After that hot start they had to start this season, but have kind of tailed off here a little bit. But still, I think this is a team that you really have to respect their speed and the way that they're able to get out and transition and everything like that. They got some guys who can really get up and down, and they have some quality players in the midfield. So this is a good club, man. And this is part of the reason why I'm nervous. I thought if maybe there was somebody else on this schedule right now, us sitting 1 point above them, I believe, it makes this a really big matchup with implications. And coming off that rivalry loss, not only do you have the disappointment of losing to Houston, you have the disappointment of one of your hottest players in Pep going down with an injury there, but just the emotional kind of letdown from that travel, from that loss, the way you lost that game where you really didn't, you weren't able to score a goal on a team that's on the bottom half of this table, is something you're going to have to rebound from. And look, we've talked about the struggles with this team on the offense, as everyone has on the offensive side of the ball for Austin. But this is where the guys you paid to come in need to really step up, because this is going to be a very difficult, very challenging month for this team here with potentially 9 games on this schedule. A lot of high quality opponents that I think we'll probably get into a little later as we look at that. But Azuni, Bukari, BV, hopefully he's back to 100%. I would anticipate he probably is, unless he got some insane sickness going on with, but I'd imagine he's 100%. But these are the guys that we paid to come in here to lift this club up, and this is the time to go ahead and do it. We got to hit our stride, and I'm just looking forward to what I think is going to be a very good game. I just hope that we come out on the right side of it.
Yeah. Well, Minnesota has, again, kind of like you mentioned, the vibes emanating from the Loons fan base and from around their team is very similar to Austin. You mentioned in the standings, right? We're actually tied on points, but we are 1 spot above them because of that first tiebreaker in this league being total wins. And while they only have 2 losses on the season, we have 5 wins to Minnesota's 4. And they have guys that they're counting on, big money transfers as well. Kelvin Yeboah being number 1 there, I think, right? Star striker brought over from Genoa in Serie A from the Italian league last summer, exploded for 8 goal contributions in his first 9 games to close the season last year, has been solid to begin this season. Yeboah did kind of tweak his ankle against Vancouver last week. Again, this is a team under Eric Ramsey that very much wants to play a counter-attacking style, right? They're going to employ these attacking-minded wing-backs in both Joseph Rosales and our boy Bongi Hongwane. And those guys flank their 3, what I would deem stout center backs, including our nemesis, Michael Boxall here, who's coming back to Q2. These guys, the wing backs, their defense has been essentially equal to Austin's. And we still, despite the last 3 matches in the downturn in form we've seen, we still think our defense is top tier in this league. Minnesota has given up an equal 10 goals conceded, and they're equal with us as well with 5 total clean sheets. So again, these guys, Rosales and Hongwane, have been kind of dual-sided type of guys, right? Almost the Travis Hunters of Minnesota, playing very well on both sides of the ball. And they just bolstered the wingback position, acquiring Julian Gressel. He was not the only move that Miami made at the deadline, and that move was just completed earlier this week. So I would expect over time that Julian Gressel gets in there more often than not in their starting lineup for Bongi, and Bongi's able to be then released back up into the attack, where I think is more of his natural position. We'll still certainly play wingback minutes for them, I would assume, but I don't know if Gressel, similar to Taylor, right? I would assume for Gressel, at most he's coming off the bench for them
Yeah.
this week. And I mentioned Yeboah. The similarities continue between these two teams, man, because and the similarities end at them playing two forwards because Tani Oluwasi paired with Kelvin Yeboah, Tani has actually been the more productive of the two strikers so far this year. And again, we end with playing two forwards because these guys are actually scoring goals. They've got 9 of the team's 12 between the two of them. And then talking about the form, right? They get 14 points from their first 7 matches, and all 14 came in a 6-match span after they lost their home opener to LAFC back in February. Over their last 3 games, you get a 0-0 draw on the road against Toronto, who, credit to Toronto, they have been playing better, but that's a team that Minnesota certainly wants to get 3 points even on the road from. Then they draw Dallas 0-0 at home with no Pitar Musa. That's a bad draw at home. And then they host Vancouver. And, again, doing some of our reconnaissance, we heard and saw some of their fans talking about, man, we got our ass whooped by Vancouver. And Vancouver, coming off of the first leg of their CONCACAF semi last week, rotated everybody. I think there was 8 changes in their starting 11. Hold it 0-0, 60 minutes in, they bring in the reinforcements. Berhalter comes in, and I think Brian White came in, and Sabby, and all these guys. And they end up hanging 3 on Minnesota in the second half. Will Trapp did pull back a goal for the Loons, but too little too late. So again, I think you and I and everybody listening, know that there is no shame in losing to this Vancouver team right now. But Minnesota is certainly in a downturn in their form. Again, very similar vibes from these two teams. And so it's going to be kind of it's going to be an interesting tug of war on Saturday because it feels like heading into a month of May that is busy for every team around this league.
Yep.
Right. You could start your month off and set your team on a trajectory, either upwards or downwards, with the result in this match.
I mean, I'm glad you brought up their schedule and the similarities between these two clubs and their recent form, because they have benefited from arguably one of the easiest, if not the easiest, schedule to start out this season. Like you said, you have the LAFC loss there. Then you beat Montreal, who hasn't won a game. You beat San Jose, who's not any good. You draw SKC, who's not very good. You draw the Galaxy, who suck. You beat RSL, quality win there. NYCFC, okay, not too impressed there. I think that game was in Minnesota, so I'm going to go ahead and give the benefit. Nope, that was in Yankee Stadium, which is quite interesting to see there on the old results there. Toronto again. I mean, you're getting they've gotten bad teams. Or they got bad teams to start this season. Then you mentioned that 0-0 draw versus a Musa-less Dallas team, which is very toothless without Musa. Holy smokes, a lot of
Musa-less. I like
Musa-less,
that.
toothless. And then you get drubbed by Vancouver, and I guess one thing I have learned through my reconnaissance and subterfuge on the internet is that most soccer fan bases are pretty miserable all the time.
Yeah,
outside of these people, and I say these people, and I include myself, are usually pretty miserable. If you're not fucking rooting for Vancouver or Cincinnati right now, even Miami fans are fucking upset. But they have benefited. While I want to preface this with what I have been saying about this team, I do respect them. I do understand their talent. You mentioned Rosales there and Bongi, who we absolutely love. And those guys are box-to-box fullback wingers. You know what I mean? We talk about box-to-box midfielders. These guys are on both sides of the ball all the time, and that's how they get their transition goals. Very talented on either side of the ball there. But they have had a cupcake schedule to start this season. So, like you said, a tug of war here. Two teams, I think, that are sitting on those 16 points, tied in the point column and everything, and trying to find some identity. Again, we have not found our offensive identity. We have maintained this team has not hit our ceiling. Their defense, again, I think there might be a bit of a smokescreen there with them. You have the 3 goals given up versus Vancouver, but like I said, the teams they played outside of that. I mean, you got both of the winless teams in the league right now. Sure. And that's always good for your defense. And outside of our 5-1 drubbing at the hands of Vancouver, who we can all agree is one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league right now, the hottest team.
They're the best team right now for sure.
Yeah. Outside of that, our defense has been better. more stout. And I do think that could be attributed to the fact that we don't play that counter-attacking style that
Not as
Minnesota
aggressively for
does
sure.
as much, yes, as aggressively. But like I said, with that schedule, I don't think they've seen a wing pair outside of the LAFC game, which they dropped 1-0 in the start of the season, of Buka and Azuni. We know the struggles. Obviously, I'll say it to the cows come home. We're not living up to our potential. But those guys are talented, aggressive players that you have to game plan for, you have to scheme for, and they require a bit more attention on the defensive side of the ball for guys like Bongi and Rosales. So it's going to be an interesting matchup here. I'm excited to see how we come out, because I think we've played counterattacking teams a little bit better than we have in the past. You see, like the teams we've played thus far. So tug of war, I thought, was an appropriate term here. But you see that midfield too as well. You got Robin Lod, who's very good. It's Will Trapp, who has
Will Trapp. Joaquin Pereira is their other DP.
So they have good players. They have solid players. Again, I think they're well coached. But we got it. I think we're a better team. I'll say that.
Yeah, I know. I think on Sunday's episode, I said at a neutral site, I would slightly lean Minnesota here. We're not at a neutral site this weekend. We are at Q2. Before we get fully into the Austin side of things, just for the sickos here going through the Minnesota roster build, it is a 2-4 build with an empty U22 slot. They filled 2 of those U22s this offseason. E1, Owen Jean, French Youth International coming over from League 2. He's actually been hurt, I believe, all year with an ankle injury. I'm not sure if he's out for the season or if he's on the mend, but I think he is still expected to be out for this weekend's match. The other one, Nicolas Romero, Argentine center back, one of those other U22s they acquired to join Sangbin Jong on their U22 list. Center back there, I think, started 5 of the 10 matches, if I recall correctly here, for the Loons in 2025. There are 3 TAM players, Bongi, Robin Lod, as you mentioned, and Michael Boxall. Kelvin Yabo is their other DP. And if you take a spin through their supplemental roster, you see a familiar name. Kip Keller has made his way to Minnesota United. Kip, unfortunately, will also be out this weekend. He's been out multiple weeks, maybe the entire season, actually, with a leg injury here. So no Kip, but we will have a revenge spot in last business day. So there's a nice little teaser for your second team action this weekend.
Do you know any insight on Sangbin Jong?
In terms of what, just why he's not like broken into their starting 11 because he looked so good against us last year.
Yeah, because I remember walking away thoroughly impressed with him and what he was able to do. And I'm looking at his minutes here and his form, and it looks like he's fallen out of favor with this team. But a guy that I walked away from looking at last year was like, that's a player right there. Like that's a guy.
Yeah, and so I think for me, again, like not watching Minnesota week in and week out, but when I do watch them, of course, paying attention to lineups on the fantasy side of things every week, he seems like he's just kind of been in a reserve role, as I think the average U22 around the league is. But again, I would still put him certainly not below average, I think, in the full pool of U22s around the league, because not just when we've seen him in person, when he does get on the pitch, he's electric, man. I think it's more just about how they're playing. I don't think he's solid enough defensively to really be in that wingback position, like week in and week out for them. And then their midfield is so strong with Lod and with Trapp and with Pereira. Like he's not, unseating Pereira. He's not unseating Lod, even though he's, Lod is on the backside of the career at this point. So I think it's just it's maybe a good problem for them to have as a team, that he's a guy that can't find consistent minutes. I'm not sure it's about the fact that he's underperforming, maybe that they just have good problems like we do when we're fully healthy. But again, maybe we'll have, there are, of course, other Austin outlets, especially like I would pump Swoon Tower right here for their opponent spotlights when I'm sure they're bringing on somebody from the Minnesota realm here for their Friday pod. So, I'll be tuned in there as well, trying to get more information out of these Minnesota fans before we go into the queue on Saturday. Let's talk about us, right? Yeah. Personnel-wise, we know Danny recording this on Wednesday evening, so Thursday is media availability with Coach. I assume that will be the first question asked, is give us the update on Danny. What we did see is Danny posting a picture of himself at training on Tuesday. Now, no shoes or socks. Like he had his training gear on, right? Looked like he was just there doing his rehab and hanging out at the facility. But I know that fans who were at the Houston match on Saturday reported that he was able to walk under his own power, not just off the pitch, but after the match walked across the pitch and back, again, unassisted. So the fact that he's out there walking around, he's hanging out at training, coach said at least a month, I think. My estimate right now, just playing internet doctor, he'll come in closer to a month rather than a Mikkel Dessler, 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe I'm just huffing the hopium, but that's where I'm at right now in terms of Danny. And in terms of getting guys back, you mentioned BV earlier. Vasquez should be back from the illness, you would think. And then BHI will be back from his red card suspension, and that is very welcome.
To be 23 again. Right, 24. Yeah, Danny's going to be okay, man. That's a good insight there, and hopefully a welcome sight come this injury report. I'm going to be keeping my eye on Dessler here, right? Like we're right at that timeline for him, and I know that the things I've seen from Coach have been relatively positive about his.
Coach said before the Galaxy, he was like, the plan, he's back the week after Houston was what he pretty much verbatim what he said.
Beautiful. That's great timing. We like that. We like that a lot.
Yeah. Again, because if you can get Dessler 15 minutes off the bench here, more if he can go, right? That would be great. Maybe get him a short rotation, a half against El Paso in the midweek. And then again, by the time we get to maybe Atlanta, the Wednesday after that we can get him starting back at home here. But again, one game at a time, and just got to keep these guys healthy, especially the ones returning from injury or illness with this Marathon May coming up. In terms of the starters or in terms of the tactics, I would hope that we get another 4-3-3 look with this offense with our guys healthy, because I don't think we've seen the 4-3-3 look. If I'm mistaken, somebody correct me. I don't think we've seen that look with the DP3 up front and Ilie. Well, Danny's injured, so we won't get to see that. But Ilie, Sabo, Owen in the midfield. I would like to see that. And of course, with Heinzike back in there for Julio. Yeah. Any place you differ in terms of that idea?
No, not at all. That's my choice 11 for sure. I mean, obviously, if Pep was healthy, I think he'd be in that starting rotation there. Yeah. The only thing that are question marks for me, I guess that's only if Pep was healthy, would be the midfield. But this is a game that we're going to need Ilie to be able to get on the ball, get some touches, and get the ball up to Azuni. As we mentioned on the last episode, 10 touches versus Houston for Azuni is unacceptable. That is completely and entirely unacceptable. It's something that we were ridiculously frustrated with Seba last year. But again, with how limited that roster was, you could actually just focus on one player in Seba. But here you really can't. So 10 touches for Azuni is unacceptable. It cannot happen again. So I'm hoping that we can get some more transition offense built from Ilie moving forward. No Sabo, good in distribution. Coming back home is going to feel good. I hope this place is going to be rocking for this game, because these boys are going to need it. We're going to need full support going into this Marathon May, as you mentioned here. So yeah, that's my choice 11. And I don't think we've only seen one half, right? Or less than one half with the 3 attacking DPs in that formation, outside of I think sometimes we've seen that formation throughout the course of a game, but not strategically, I think, throughout an extended period of time. So I definitely want to see that. And again, a healthy BV who should be rested, ready to roll here. Azuni, we know, chomping at the bit to get some goals up. And I think, with the speed of Buka, if you're pushed up, brother, and those wing backs are up and down the field, you're going to have a hard time keeping those guys in containment. And if we can get some long balls over the top, trying to catch them in position, and you have those 3 center backs on there in a little bit of an island on that back line, then you're going to be able to create some chances here.
And I think the only places you could potentially tinker, and again, I think these are non-zero chances of happening, but not much far above that. Taylor could start. He could.
He could.
Again, I don't think it's likely, but especially if you're going to go back to a 4-4-2 look at home and try to be more solid defensively in transition, right? And we saw that a ton so far this year. Having him as that left winger, or left midfield position there, right? Out wide makes some sense. Or if you're in the 4-3-3 and you don't want a Sabovic-Ilie pairing, maybe you make Owen the 8 and you put Diego Rubio kind of in as a pseudo 10, right? To try to distribute against this somewhat compact Minnesota defense, especially on the road for them. So again, those are just the only tweaks that I could see us an hour before the match. You look down at the phone. Oh, look, there's a change we didn't expect. I think those are the two for me. But again, I don't think it's likely.
I mean, I think it really comes down to how we're going to approach guarding Oluwaseyi and
Yeboah.
If they're going to get the Bouanga treatment, in my opinion. If you're going to give them the Bouanga treatment and send the doubles and things like that, then I think you're going to have Rubio not in that situation. I also don't think it's likely that Rubio can get the start here, but we have been struggling on the offensive side of the ball, the transition from our midfield to those scoring guys. And I think Diego is probably the best suited to do that from the reserve players that we have available right now. So I could see him getting some time, but I'm very interested to see if Robbie Taylor is able to do that. Obviously playing with a plethora of talent and offensive superstar studs on Miami and being into distribution there. So we'll see what that looks like for me, but that is my choice 11 that we went over there before. And I think it just comes down to the approach. Coach said I don't have a crystal ball. But are you going to go ahead and make the call to be like, we are going to be more aggressive at home because we know the goals need to come. And this is how you can kind of try to predict the future per se with a crystal ball, where it's like, we're going to be more frontward facing with our attack and moving forward up the pitch. So it's going to come down to that decision for me with the coaching staff, if we're going to give those strikers the double treatment that we have seen from the past. But you're going to have to watch this team in transition.
Yeah, and it could be Taylor instead of Rubio in a 4-3-3 look, like kind of as you mentioned there. So again, we'll see what coach rolls out there. The one note I did want to mention, I don't think anything is going to come out of this, but the league is investigating in accordance with the anti-discrimination policy. Joseph Rosales got into it with Emmanuel Sabbi late in last Saturday's match. Sabbi and then Sebastian Berhalter both kind of calling out Rosales to the head official there, who was Drew Fisher, of course. But Rosales was not disciplined in the moment. League is looking into it. We'll see if anything comes of it. So that's just something to watch as we lead up to Saturday, what the results of this investigation are. And look, man, if putting aside, if Rosales did say something untoward in that moment, of course, can't do that, man. Everybody, we're fully against that type of stuff. But I'd take a Joseph Rosales suspension. Look, I'm an Austin fan first, and I would take anything we can get gifted in that regard. And the last thing here, if I guess putting a little damper on things, but interesting stat from our friends at the MLS Gone Wild Twitter account. Austin FC are the only team in MLS to have two players ranked in the bottom 5 for the worst goals minus expected goals. You've got BV at minus 2.9 and Izuni at minus 2. So again, if you are a believer in the expected goals metrics, then again, this just further plays into the idea that these guys are going to start hitting the back of the net more frequently going forward. And May would be the best time to turn it around.
Yep. I mean, I've been saying it, and I don't know if people are annoyed with me saying it, but I do think that these guys are just too talented to be kept off the board for this long, as long as it has been up until this point. And at some point, I do think the quality will rise to the top. We'll get this thing figured out, and the goals will start to come.
All right, E, unless you have anything else to add here on this Minnesota match, how much is Austin FC winning by on Saturday?
Well, Great that I get asked that right after I say, the goals will come. I'm
Yeah.
going with the classic 1-0 Austin win here. All right. So hopefully maybe that could break the scoring free, because I've been predicting multiple goal games.
Yeah, same.
Well, look, we have 2 goals in our last 3 games. Minnesota 1. So like, I don't think either of these teams are really humming, firing on all cylinders here. So I'm going to go 1-0, and I'll take it. Shit.
Yeah, I would take that as well, because I mentioned I would pick Minnesota at a neutral site right now. So we're at Q2, and I'm even more of a wet blanket here, E. I got a 1-1 draw here, which of course we would not be happy with, because you got to keep racking up 3 points when you get the chance to play at home. But I'm not backing off my respect for this Minnesota team, the way they play together. These guys are bought in, and again, I do think that this game presents itself to both of these teams as a potential get right spot. So hopefully it's our boys taking advantage of that. And look, we don't care how you get it done, boys. Just bring us home the 3 points.
Come on down to Farmer Field where the champions play. Get ready for the game. It's Lost Business Day.
Last business day on episode 220 of the North End podcast, and we had a signing made official early this week. Finally, we knew he had been still around the club, seeing him in posts from the team, training a lot with the first team, but now officially signed to Austin FC2 is Charlie. I've been calling him Ferrar. I think I saw Moises of Verde All Day say that I believe it's Farah. So again, if I'm getting that wrong too, somebody correct me. But Charlie Farah signed on a contract guaranteed through the 2026 season with an option for 2027. So as an additional goalkeeper here, certainly taking the spot of Aaron Cervantes with that mutual contract termination a few weeks back. Farah is 22 years old, originally from Wakefield, England. I know we talked about this a little bit when we identified Charlie in the preseason out there at Coachella. But started his collegiate career at Chowan University before transferring to UNC Asheville back in 2022. He was the Big South goalkeeper of the year in both of his seasons with UNC Asheville, as well as the Big South Defensive Player of the Week 5 times. Last year in his senior season, he tied the program record for fewest goals allowed in a season with 15 and kept 6 clean sheets, which was the Division I program era record at Asheville, a 75% save percentage throughout his collegiate career. And then he also represented USL League 2 side Sarasota Paradise during the summer of last year, making 9 appearances for Sarasota. So officially, even though he's been here a couple months, officially welcome Charlie to Austin FC2. And I imagine at some point we'll get to see him in net.
I was going to say, I think his time will be coming soon here with how that team has looked. And I don't want to place all that on Allstrup by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think Charlie's going to get his shot. So welcome. Happy to have you. Asheville, one of my favorite places. Beautiful.
Yeah. So quick recap of last week's Copita Tejas matchup, or I should say Sunday evenings, right? Because that was just kicking off as we were finishing recording our last episode. We mentioned briefly that Stephen Cleveland was loaned down and started for FCTO on Sunday. Didn't do us any good. 22nd minute of this one, you had a Dynamo player go down on the inline to the left of Austin's penalty area, and a foul was called. On the replay of this, it sure looked like a non-contact injury. Micah got called for the foul, but it didn't appear like he really made, was touching the Houston player there. Either way, player comes off. On that free kick on the restart, that ball gets lofted in front of net, and Cleveland gets a punch to it, but not clean, and it gets kind of knocked down in front of the net. Austin flubs the clearance attempt. A Houston player pops it back into the mixer, and it gets headed home by Exxon Arzu for the Houston lead. That was the only goal in the first half. Second half, man, there were multiple Austin chances here. We tied them on shots, 9 apiece. We had more shots on target, 6-5, but Houston converts both of their big chances. Austin only converted their single big chance, which ended up being in the 90th minute. But in the opening moments, first 20 minutes or so of the second half, I credit the Houston keeper on a lot of these, man. Irvin Torres had an awesome header flying in out of nowhere, almost stealing it from Peter Grogan there in the box. Riley Thomas, Ruben Bonachera, all these guys had clear chances. Pedro Cruz for Houston, I thought stood tall in net. So sometimes you have to credit the opponent. 66th minute, we did get a triple sub. You got Vlad, Anthony Deanda, and Diego Abarca in for Peter Grogan, Riley Thomas, and Mo Badawia. 77th minute, Austin playing it out of the back, loose touch by Irvin of all people, turns it over. Cleveland's off his line. Houston slots it home to double the lead. After the second goal, we did get what I believe is the debut of Jacobaro, the midfielder we added a few weeks back. He came in for Micah. The 89th minute, Jimmy draws a penalty with just a few minutes remaining. The 3 minutes of stoppage are given. Ruben Bonachera converts the penalty kick, but time ends up running out before we can grab an equalizer. So you drop the first match against Houston this year, 2-1, and you turn right around. You got another opportunity here on Friday on short rest. Sporting KC 2 coming to town here. This is going to kick off at the pitch at 7:30 on Friday, so plenty of time for anybody to get out there after work and check out the second team. Scared Money Derby, of course, but Benny Feilhaber is gone, no longer coaching this SKC2 side, nor are a ton of their players that we were familiar with. I forget the giant foot, Pau Vidal. Just all I had to do was just think about it for a half second. Not there anymore. A lot of those other names. But I teased earlier that there is a revenge spot for an opponent here this week, and Brian Arellano. This is where he ended up with Sporting KC2. He's appeared in 4 of their matches so far, starting 2. No goal contributions yet, but he has the second most shots on the team, only appearing in 4 of their 7 matches. SKC2 is the worst team in Next Pro right now. Certainly in the Western Conference, they're on just 2 points through their 7 matches with a negative 13 goal differential. They have allowed double the goals that Austin FC2 has. 20 goals allowed total in their 7 matches. Again, Austin FC2 with a game in hand, but have scored just 1 less goal and again allowed 10 fewer. But like you mentioned previewing the Dynamo match, man, it's time to fucking turn this thing around.
Yeah.
You won the opener in blowout fashion, right? Against Rapids. We were flying out of that match thinking, okay, FC2 is back, baby. This is going to be a fun season. And again, it is still very early. But since then, 3 losses, 2 draws, both draws, PK shootout losses. So you're only sitting on 5 points from these first 6 matches, and the rest of the field is pulling away quickly. We are 4 points back of even the 9 seed here in the West. So you got Sporting coming to town here on Friday. Should have Nico Van Ryn back in the mix after his red card suspension was served. I know it's so early in the season. Yeah. I'm pulling the lever, though, dude. This is a must-win.
I'll put my hand on there, too, brother. I'll pull it with you because we saw, especially with this team last year, where if you dig a big enough hole to start this season, it's just so unpredictable to know who's going to be playing for these teams, who's going for it later in the season. If their first team club isn't performing, if they're dropping guys down to do stuff. We just had Stephen Cleveland in goal. It's impossible to predict who's going to be playing and suiting up for these teams. And if you dig a big enough hole, you're just going to be in really big trouble here. So we got to get this thing turned around. Any update, any information, perusing the things about Alistue?
I haven't seen any sort of injury updates on him. He did miss this last match due to injury. So, maybe we can get, now that we're back home, we've got a couple outlets that go out there, including We Are Austin TV. Hernan's been out there on foot, doing the hard work for the people, for the fans. So maybe he can get a little bit of an update, especially if Jorge isn't active, either starting or on the bench here this coming Friday. So my only other note here, that I hadn't talked about yet, is it doesn't appear like their stats are complete either on the Next Pro site or on FOTMob. Only 5 of their 7 goals were accounted for. And I did think for a moment that it was because they were in Open Cup. I forget the team that they lost to, but it actually might have been the Des Moines Menace. I'm not sure. Because Benny Feilhaber was playing for Des Moines, if I recall correctly. So I think he played against his old team there, which is the old team that he coached. which is just the magic of the Open Cup. But
That is
through
insane.
the 5 matches that are accounted for in the stats, nobody has more than 1 goal. So nobody on SKC standing out as kind of the one to focus on. Brian Ariano is the name that really just stuck out to me here. So unless you have anything else to add, you can let me know how much FCito is winning by this Friday.
Look, man, I'm going to the watch. It's Jimmy time. We need
All
some
right.
Jimmy. I need some Jimmy in my life. Give me a 2-0 Austin win here. Get this thing rolling in the right direction. This SKC2 team is terrible. We are not terrible, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think we're terrible.
You gotta show us.
You got to show it to me. We know the talent of Micah. We know the talent of Irvin. We know the talent of Jimmy. Alice Dewey, I'm a big fan of his as well. So I'm hoping this is a nice little get right spot. We'll be at the pitch, probably the best fans in all of Next Pro. We'll be cheering these boys on. We got to get this thing rolling in the right direction.
The boys or the boys?
The boys.
It's a little Shorzy reference for those so inclined. I'm just going to be in lockstep with you. Give us the 2-0, okay? We'll take care of business. A little clean sheet. Keep it nice and tidy. Send everybody home happy into their Saturday for the first team match. So 2-0 for both of us. Like we always say, we don't care how you get it done, boys. Just bring us back the 3 points. So let's close out the week talking about the nonsense. And we've got a best ball update. Still at the top of the table, but we now have company because Verde all day, 55 points. We are tied at the top of the table with Verde all day, headed into the transfer draft. Austin drops a few points. They're still solidly in third, though. And soccer-wise, has been on a little bit of a heater, just making a little bit of noise. They have now opened up a 22-point gap on 5th place Moon Tower Soccer, who had a very tough week with a number of DNPs, only 21 points for Moon Tower. So that means the Verde Pendant picked up some points on 5th this week with their 33. And to the VP boys, you made it. Transfer draft starts tonight. We will have our teams reorganized by the time the matches start on Saturday. So next Wednesday, we can go ahead and recap the moves that everybody made starting tonight. And we did conduct the coin flip, or rather the spin of the Wheel of Destiny. North End Podcast wins the spin of destiny. So we will be picking 5th. And Phil will be picking 6th tonight as we begin the first transfer draft. So anything for you? It looked like you were a little confused, maybe misread my text the other day when I said we were still at the top, but now tied.
I just didn't know why you would put Phil ahead of us, even though we're tied. But the Wheel of Destiny has spoken, and I like seeing us at the top there. I'm gonna get hashtag Lojo in going for Verde Pendant, so they can bring him back in, maybe have some success here moving forward. But excited for the transfer draft. We got moves to make for sure, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So am I. So we will get that underway with all of our buddies here tonight. And will close it out talking about the betting picks, which, whoo boy, we're fully back. Before we get into the recap here, just want to remind you all to sign up at Underdog Fantasy. The MLS season is here. If you want to make some picks on your favorite players in sports, check out Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game. You choose higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players, and you can win up to 1,000 times your entry. Underdog is available in 33 states, including right here in Texas. To sign up, click the link in the description of this video and use promo code NORTHEND at sign up, and you'll get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick to get you started. So join the millions of fans who have won billions on Underdog. Promo code NORTHEND at sign up there. The link to sign up is in the description of this episode, whether you're watching on the YouTube or listening to the audio version. So you can click that link, use promo code NORTHEND at sign up, get the bonus cash, get your free pick, and then you come back to the northendpodcast.com on Saturday morning to see what we're rolling with on Underdog. And last week, the picks come through. With the Underdog entry, we went John Polskamp, higher than 1.5 goals allowed. Shout out Kevin Denke for what I think is the goal of the year so far with that bicycle kick to cash the early pick. And then in the 6:30 window, Miguel Almiron, Chicho Arango, both looking dire at the half, both come through for us at the end of the night. So you add on the week plus 5.28 units on the Underdog side of things, which puts us at plus 15.71 through the first 10 weeks. And then the picks kept coming here, ended up plus 4.82 units. FC Cincinnati comes through for us, Portland comes through for us. We get goals from Chucky Lozano. We get a goal from Georgi Mihailovic. And then what really put us over the top is the Denny Buonga brace, which we had a half unit on it, plus 900. So thank you, Denny. And we will take our plus 4.82 units. That means plus 12.7 at the books on the year. So again, you are up over 28 units if you have tailed everything on Underdog and at the books here this week. So again, we're having fun here in the North End.
What's that? What was that quote that Cade Cunningham said? "Don't touch me, I'm sizzling."
Yeah,
that's you right now. My buddy Tom is out of work. Maybe he could just tail all of our bets and get himself some income coming in this week.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, I think that might be good for him. But yeah, those are great, man. I've been loving the 3-pick UD plays. They've been awesome.
Yeah. So we'll keep that rolling here this weekend. And again, you can go to the northendpodcast.com for our match preview articles. Those are posted the day after our midweek episodes, and then Saturday mornings for the Underdog and the betting picks. Anything else for you on episode 220 before we shut it down?
Looking forward to seeing B for his birthday. Happy early birthday, B. I'll see you, and don't expect me to not dominate beer pong.
Hey, as long as I'm on the team, come on, we gotta run this shit here, E. So that'll do it for us here. Appreciate you tuning in, sticking with us on episode 220 of the North End Podcast. We will be back on Sunday recapping Austin FC's matchup against Minnesota United, recapping the second team's matchup against Sporting KC2, and talking about everything else that happens in the Austin FC universe between now and then. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. We'll do the same, and we'll see everybody at the Q on Saturday and back here on Sunday for another episode. Until then, he's E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.